The Pilgrims of Plymouth, written and illustrated by Marcia Sewall.
Thyself a praise, psaltery and harp at dawning day I will appraise.
I, Governor Bradford, calls us pilgrims. We are English, and England was our home. We left behind us much that we loved when we came to America. But our lives were ruled by King James, and for many years it seemed as though our very hearts were in prison in England. We believe it is the Bible only that can instruct us in the ways of the Lord. We have to worship freely. September 1620, our lives changed. We were 70 menfolk and womenfolk, 32 good children, a handful of cocks and hens, and 2 dogs gathered together on a dock in Plymouth, England, ready to set sail for America in a small ship called the Mayflower. Our trip was costly, but English merchants loaned us money, hoping to prosper in time by our successful settlement. After an abundance of prayers and tears, we made farewells at dockside and boarded our small ship. Our voyage across the Atlantic Ocean began with a prosperous wind, but the sea soon became sharp and violent, and storms howled about us. Water washed across and down through our decks and almost took John Howland overboard. A baby was born. Oceanus Hopkins, he was named. November 12th, a Sabbath day, we arrived in America. We praised God for our safe journey and this new land. We intended to form our plantation someplace about Hudson's River in the territory of northern Virginia, but we were off course and weary with our voyage. It is grateful we were to reach any land safely, and thus we came to New England, first landing on the point of Cape Cod. While still on board ship in preparation for life in America, we agreed upon laws of behavior. The freemen signed their names to this document, and we elected John Carver our governor. We took the shallop, our small sailing vessel, ashore to be repaired by the Mayflower's carpenter. Its sides had sprung, and its seams needed caulking, but it had served well as sleeping quarters on our voyage. Some of the menfolk, laden with armor, rowed to shore in the ship's longboat to explore, and womenfolk bundled up laundry and went ashore, too, for a morning of washing. Indeed, they washed with pleasure on that Monday after being over many days at sea. But it seemed as though the land offered nothing. It was a hideous and desolate wilderness full of wild beasts and wild men. Aye, but it did give to us one great gift, a strange Indian seed of many colors, stored in baskets under mounds of earth. Corn seed. We desperately needed that corn seed, and we took it. Later, we would pay the Indians for our gift. And wanting to remember that place forever, we named it Cornhill. Down the bay side of the Cape, some of our brave men sailed in the now-fit shallop, looking for a safe and deep harbor for our ship and a place to pitch our dwellings. Plymouth seemed a goodly place, so the Mayflower followed. December 16th, winter was upon us. Looking aland, we saw scrub trees and great trees growing down to the brink of the sea, and on the hills there were large cornfields stubbly with age. And by God's grace, when we explored, we found a very sweet brook and plentiful springs nearby, and no Indian greeted us. Our good fortune increased, for in the woods were wild fowl, hare and deer, nuts and berries, and the sea was abundant with fish. The sassafras tree, with root bark so valued in England as medicine, grew here also. Though ill and exhausted, we were ready to begin our lives at New Plymouth in this strange and hard land. We set to work. On Christmas Day, we started building the common house for the benefit of all. Some men cut and felled trees, others carried them to the clearing, and those who were skilled rived and sawed logs, shaping them for building purposes. The young folks scouted the shore for roof thatch reeds. It was very hard work. And now, the general sickness was upon us. Our common house turned into the likes of a hospital, and we took care of each other. Those still well enough struggled to put up dwelling houses and shelters, but the ground was frozen, and our hands and feet were bitter cold. Half our community died that first winter, including our governor, John Carver, and little Oceanus Hopkins, born on the Mayflower. But the Lord giveth, and the Lord taketh, according to his will. With great sadness, we buried our dead on a hill overlooking the harbor. Of the survivors, scarce 50 in number, over half were children. We elected William Bradford our new governor and looked ahead. In April, the Mayflower returned to England with only the crew. Though we could have sailed home, we chose to remain in America. It was a frightening beginning, but it was God's will.
Who is the man that life doth will, that loveth days good for to see? Do good and evil quite eschew, seek peace and after it pursue.
We rise each day as the sun comes up. With haste, we stir up the coals and get the fire burning. We're glad to know the warmth of a fire on this cold morning. Feel the bread and such frozen and only 4 feet from the hearth. Last night, you may be sure, we slept deep beneath the bedrugs. And today, it is layers of clothes we will be wearing. Before we break the fast, we ask the Lord, please give us strength to do your will and to know your word. If we are well and able, we will go about our humble duties, foul weather or fair. No man rests. It is at noon that we will return home for a large meal, again to give thanks. Some of us menfolk have an English grammar school education, and a few men, like Elder Brewster, are college educated. But we must be fishermen and farmers here. Our hands are as important as our heads if we would survive. We work hard to tame this wilderness of ours. We cut back woods to expose fields to sun and rain. That first spring, without horse or plow, we cleared 20 acres of land. We planted mounds of Indian corn and bushels of barley and peas. At harvest time, instead of famine, God gave us plenty. For safety, we built our houses close together with a broad street betwixt them. Each small house is sided with wide boards or narrow clapboards. Our floors are ofttimes made of wood, but also made of bare earth, soaked with water and flattened smooth. Our rooms with wooden walls are dark, save the light of the fire. But sometimes, in building our houses, we fill the space betwixt the heavy upright posts with wattle sticks or laths, smeared with daub and whitened with lime. That white against the darkness pleases us and reminds us of our English homes. Our roofs are shingled or thatched with sun-dried reeds. A gentle light filters in through our few small windows covered with linen soaked in linseed oil, a light that softens the harshness of our lives. It is our responsibility to make decisions and laws. What shall be the punishment for idle gossip? Shall a man be placed in the stocks for gaming on Sunday? And what about Goody Billington? Why, she was seen about the plantation after dark, when the vapors are most foul and none but thieves would dare be out, save for the ward keeping watch over us from high upon the fort. Aye, we have a constable here and several magistrates who maintain laws, but we are mainly law-abiding people. And it is our responsibility to protect our women and children from Spanish and French and Indian attack. Indeed, Captain Miles Standish has trained each man to bear a firing piece, and he leads us in musket drills. We have impaled our community round with a palisade fence. It keeps safe our busy village from the vast unknown that surrounds our lives. How we feared those unclothed and painted savages when we first came to America. Indians are so unlike Englishmen. They move about the woods as specks of light and shadow. They are as silent as snow. No loud conversation or clanking armor or musket fire can be heard from them, just an arrow from nowhere. In March of our first year of settlement, a tall sagamore named Samoset surprised us with a friendly visit. He told us that his tribe came not from here, that the Indians hereabouts were called Patuxets, but a deadly plague had destroyed them 4 years before our arrival, all but one, named Squanto, who was elsewhere in the world as a captive of Englishmen. Squanto became our helpful friend. Aye, our language he knew, and so could interpret for us Indian affairs. He was the pilot of our shallop as we explored the coast of America. He understood the ways of nature and taught us to plant corn when the oak bud had burst and the leaves were as big as a mouse's ear. He taught us how to catch herring and how to fertilize our harsh soil with them when we planted corn seed. He taught us to tread eels out of the river mud in warm seasons and to catch them by hand, and he taught us how to catch them through winter's ice. Samoset also introduced us to a great sachem of these parts named Massasoit, and in our first year of settlement we made a peace treaty with him. We agreed that his people must not hurt our people or bear punishment. We agreed not to steal from each other, and to leave our weapons behind when we came to each other upon any occasion. And we agreed to help each other if we should suffer attack. Aye, we have respected and honored that treaty. Now we walk as peacefully and safely in the woods as in the highways of England. Our first wondrous harvest called for celebration. We sang psalms and played games. We rejoiced and fired our noisy muskets into the air. And the Indians came and joined in the feasting. Not just an Indian or two, but Massasoit arrived with over 90 braves who stayed among us for 3 festive days. We prayed and gave thanks for such a harvest and our survival.
Our days are full. We take our little ones into the fields, then we must help with the harvest. But we are needed most at our hearths and near our homes. Our men return hungry from woods and fields at the noon hour, and our many children are never full. But children are a gift from God, and we favor all the small folk the good Lord's got to send us. Mornings we spend in preparation of the midday meal. Bread baked, a pottage made, or the roasted meat needs turning on the spit. And our homes need care. As many as 9, and more if need be, share this simple house. Our furnishings are few. Our table is naught but a board set betwixt 2 barrels. We stand or sit much informal about the room to eat. Our plate is a trencher of wood or of pewter. Our most useful utensils are hands, though we do use spoons. Aye, and we enjoy large napkins. What belongings we have shipped with us to America. Though a fine bedstead is a sign of wealth, most of our beds are but a straw or feather mattress, laid out upon the floor. A cradle sets by the hearth for warmth. The fireplace is well furnished with andirons and lug pole, pothooks and trammels, and spits and kettles. Our rooms are fragrant with the smell of clothes and food, people and herbs, straw and earth, and the ever-present smell of a fire burning on the hearth. During the warming months of spring, and during those glorious summer and fall months, we rise with the first light and work till sundown, preparing for winter. The root crops must be gathered and stored, fish gutted and packed in salt. Fruits must be pickled and preserved, including cowcumber pickles, the favorites of our children. Pompions must be cut into pieces, strung and hung from the rafters to dry, along with onions and corn and herbs for medicine and seasoning. In fall, our swine must be slaughtered, scalded, scraped, and cured, and fat must be rendered into soap. We do not have over many clothes, and we work hard to keep what well-worn garments we have patched and mended. But during those tedious, long winter months, when there is a bit of time to spare, we will sit about the fire and sew a jerkin for our husbands, or knit a new pair of stockings for the children. And in summer, when there is evening light about, we will make a pair of sleeves for ourselves, or add a ruffle to a petticoat. We are grateful for God's gifts. The sick need nursing, and the young need care. How often we are called upon to brew an infusion, or a decoction of herbs, or to administer a poultice. But for a great illness we will call upon Surgeon Fuller. It is he who pulls teeth and leeches us spring and fall. We seldom bathe, for removing our clothes would expose our bodies to foul vapors. As the sun sets, we are grateful for rest. God protect and preserve us.
And hath against the innocent received no bribery. He that doeth this shall not be moved unto eternity.
Nay, we have neither school nor schoolmaster here, but our elders hope for a schoolmaster soon to come from England. We learn obedience from our parents, and if we are naughty, we are told to go mend our manners, or we will get a proper thump on the bridge. It is our father who will find himself before the village magistrate, and indeed in the stocks, if he will not look to our behavior. Then all the village shall pass by and stare at him and make dreadful comment. At dawn we take buckets and run to fetch water from the village spring. The grass is damp, and cobwebs sparkle in the early morning light of summer. The air smells of salt from the ocean, and we must also fetch wood for the hearth fire. After breaking the fast on bread, forced eggs, and little beer, we begin to work. We will feed scratch to the hens, milk the cows and goats, and take them to the meadow to graze. And on the way home we will stop to pick sky-blue whortleberries. In the fall we will drive our swine to the oak woods to feed on acorn and other ground nuts. And there are days when we must muck out the animal pens. In early spring we will help poke seeds into the freshly worked earth, and then spend hours stoning crows away from those seeds. And as the seeds sprout, we must pull the unwanted tares from the garden. But we don't mind spending time in the garden, for we know what it is like to have no food. We know how it feels to be cold and hungry. We remember our first winter in America. At harvest time, in late summer, we pick Indian corn and peas and beans. We gather in wheat and rye and barley and crab apples for vergee. If we are strong, we will gather thatch for roofing and wattle for walls. We learn to shape wood for fences, for clapboards, for spoons and bowls and tubs and troughs and such. When there has been much rain and sun throughout the growing season, and the harvest is wondrous fair, we may celebrate with games and feasting. We play hide and seek, and sometimes hide under a pile of sweet hay in the cowshed. We play blind man's bluff and stool ball. We play pitch the bar and tug of war. And we love to foot race down the broad street of our village. We that are the young misses here learn of housewifery. We learn to grind corn and barley and wheat. We learn to feel the weight of a measure of flour in our hands, to sift flour through a bolter of cloth, to know a pinch of salt and a dash of mace, to scour and scald, to bruise, to sleep a pottage and to broach a piece of meat. We learn to judge a warm and a hot fire. We learn to knead the soft dough with the heels of our hands, to rise it and form it into lovely round loaves of cheat bread. Boxed into small garden patches beside our houses are herbs. Their many uses are taught to us by our mothers. There are pot herbs like spinach and violet leaves, red sage and mint, which we put into salads. There are root herbs like carrots and turnips and Jerusalem artichokes, which are delicious in a pottage. And there are herbs to ease sickness. We learn to strew rosemary in the room for cleansing the bad airs when sickness is about, and rue to keep away pesky flies. We use soapwort for scouring bowls, and the biting smell of southernwood to discourage moths. We learn to spin wool on a hand spindle and to knit. We learn to cross-stitch and feather-stitch, blind-stitch and back-stitch. We begin our first sampler, and soon will help with the mending and making of clothes. Betwixt sundown Saturday and sunset Sunday is the Lord's Day. For many hours we sit in the large room beneath the fort to worship. It matters not where we worship, for we know that it is the people who are the church. And at times we watch the hourglass slowly trickle sand. We listen to our elders read from the Bible. We listen to Governor Bradford give sermon. We try to hear and be instructed in the ways of the Lord. Our fathers must not work in the fields, nor fish, nor hunt on the Sabbath. Our mothers must not bake, nor work about the hearth on the Sabbath. And we must not play. The Sabbath is the Lord's day, and we give thanks.
Shout to Jehovah, all the earth. Serve ye Jehovah with gladness. Before him come with singing mirth. Know that Jehovah, he is God.
With most of our Indian neighbors, we are at peace. And with them, we trade our cloth and iron pots and pans and farming tools for their animal skins, especially that of the beaver. We ship those skins to English merchants who turn them into fancy coats and hats for sale in England. We also ship clapboards and soft woods, which they have little of in England, and fish and sassafras. Thus we pay off our debt, and we begin to prosper. Here in America, the air is good and the water is wholesome. We feel the sweetness of the country. Our health is restored. More ships arrive with more passengers, and our plantation begins to grow. 10 years have passed since we came to America. People from Plymouth Colony are beginning to move outside the plantation for want of more land, and are settling in Duxborough and other diverse townships. And there is a new, fast-growing colony at the head of Massachusetts Bay. Long have we struggled to survive. Now we prosper. Our greatest wealth is our harvest, our healthy families, and a place to worship freely. God be praised.